And I'm like, fuck, trauma. And so what I discovered was this understanding between chemistry and compatibility. Because oftentimes what I was seeking charge, excitement, that energy or that dynamic that when you meet someone, you're like, ooh, there's something about this person. But what I found was those relationships, once the chemistry died down, there was nothing to talk about. There was nothing to connect to. There was no shared values at a pinnacle hierarchical level. And so through the process of identifying chemistry versus compatibility, I started to go, well, hang on. My chemistry, this thing that I thought was intuition, was driven by this concept called trauma bonding. Because what I discovered was, whenever I found a very highly charged levels of chemistry, I found that we shared similar or common relative traumas. But that was the underlying trauma bond. The underlying value-based connection that we hung a lot of our relationship on was the concept of a void. And void is lack. But because we shared so many similar psychological characteristics from the void that was created, it produced something at a cellular level that created a level of charge. Now let's think about this. As social groups, what do people love to sit around and talk about? Their problems. We've been trauma bonding our whole life and no one told us. We just thought it was having a vent. No, that's how humans have been, in some cases, conditioned to bond, is by sharing their pain. Now, in a healthy environment, that's proactive. If you're doing it repetitiously every day in a competitive environment to see who's got the best trauma, not so healthy anymore. But then I started looking at every dynamic. In retrospect, I'm like, I can see trauma, and I've started to realize, hang on a second, I'm not just trauma bonding with partners. I'm trauma bonding with everyone in my life. And so for me, when I started to identify that I was trauma bonding in intimate relationships, I was trauma bonding in business, I was trauma bonding with clients, has anyone noticed that as you do your work, you shed and you attract better talent, better people? This is part in process of doing the work. As we do the work, we shed layers of these trauma bonds. And as you peel back those trauma layers, the behaviors become more conscious, and less reactive. But our goal is consciousness. This is a game of remembrance and catching. Oh, I remember. Oh, there it is. How do we become aware enough to realize that, holy shit, the possibility that some of them are based on chemistry, not necessarily compatibility, and that chemistry in some cases is actually being driven by trauma bonds. And as we peel those bonds back, what we're discovering in some cases is there's a level of polarity that is built that bounces people away, or in some cases we find underneath all that trauma bonding, there is actually some compatibility there in the first place. But we never actually found it because we were too busy bonding at a sexual or a traumatic or a pain problem level.